Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Ranking Member Cruz, for holding today's hearing. I want to thank you, Mr. Washington, for your quarter century of service to our nation in uniform. It's said that the NCO is the backbone of the Army, and a backbone, a strong one, is exactly what you'll need to be FAA Administrator, because you will need to stand up to pressures from aircraft manufacturers as well as from airlines looking to reduce or circumvent critical aviation safety requirements. There's a saying about aviation regulations that they're written in blood. When deadly accidents happen, we investigate and adjust our regulations to ensure whatever went wrong never happens again, but only after blood has been shed. Following the deadly Kogan air crash in 2009, which killed 50 people, Congress passed a law to require all commercial airline pilots to complete 1,500 flight hours. To its credit, the FAA has rejected all proposals to water down this key safety requirement. Sergeant Major Washington, when we spoke last year, we talked about my strong belief in the 1,500-hour rule, a belief that is not based on evidence-less emotion, and instead grounded in my own expertise as a pilot, and also as a former commander of an Army aviation company where I was in charge of the training, the aviation training of my soldiers. We know how critical real-world flying experience is for safety. Look, I accept that there will always be those who want to give into the temptation to cut corners or buy into the false hope of a quick fix or an easy answer, especially when there is a critical aviation workforce shortage. But as chair of the Aviation Safety Subcommittee and an aviator, it's my responsibility to stand up for a basic safety principle. Hours in the cockpit are hours. Butts spent in the seat in the air cannot be replaced. No matter how many hours you spend in a lecture hall or in a simulator. Experience and expertise cannot be faked. These life-saving attributes are earned through hours of hard work and dedication to the craft of piloting a real aircraft in the air with real stakes. Mr. Washington, if confirmed to lead FAA, will you commit to defending the 1,500-hour rule and rejecting any proposal to weaken or water down what is really a common sense requirement that before we place the lives of commercial passengers in the hands of a new pilot, that pilot must first gain at least 1,500 hours of flight time?
Thank you for the question, Senator. If confirmed, I will not deviate from that standard. I agree with you that the 1,500-hour rule should stay in place. I have never, especially as a Command Sergeant Major, believed in lowering the standard. I believed in bringing people up to the standard, and that is very, very important. So I would not deviate from that standard.
Thank you. Simulators are important. Simulators are good, but simulators have a reset button where you get to be reborn again. It is not the same as being in a cockpit out there in icing environment, in windy environments. And I know you've trained many a soldier in a simulator, in many types of simulators. My second question for you, as we discussed last year, I remain concerned about the FAA's hesitancy to use its civil enforcement authority. There are two issues involving the Boeing 737 MAX that I find just stunning, but not in a good way. The first involves evidence that came to light as part of a congressional investigation, and I have a graphic that's up here. This is an internal Boeing memo documenting plans to avoid using the term MCAS outside of the company and instead merely describe the new function as an addition to the already existing speed trim system. The memo suggests a motive. If we, and I quote, if we emphasize MCAS is a new function, there may be greater certification and training impact, end quote. Even worse, the memo says this plan to downplay the significance of MCAS was approved by an authorized representative, which was a Boeing employee that FAA specifically authorized to conduct certification work on behalf of the agency. This is what I mean when I say you're going to have a strong backbone through the pressures from the industry. Yet FAA never investigated this internal Boeing memo, and I'm not aware of any FAA civil enforcement action against the responsible individuals. As you know, pilots' inability to arrest the MCAS ultimately led to 2 deadly MAX crashes, killing 346 people. The other issue is that apparently Boeing knew of the angle of attack disagree alert was inoperable on more than 80% of the 737 MAX aircraft, in direct violation of the plane's FAA-approved type design. Yet Boeing did not inform the FAA, air carriers, or MAX pilots of this for more than a year, and only did so after the first deadly MAX crash. Faulty angle of attack data was a factor in both MAX crashes, yet FAA, as it stands currently, does not appear to have taken any civil enforcement actions against Boeing for this. While I am pleased that the Department of Transportation's Inspector General is now examining FAA's handling of these issues, I fear this speaks to a broader reluctance at FAA to use its civil enforcement authority. Mr. Washington, will you commit to using FAA's full civil enforcement authority as appropriate?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Yes. I think I want to first acknowledge the role of the families in advocating for holding Boeing and FAA accountable. And if confirmed, I would do and foot stomp what has already been conveyed to Boeing. I would also reinforce to our workforce that they will always have the time to do what they need, and that includes civil enforcement.
I have a final question for the record. I'll submit for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Budd.